Hello and welcome to round 5 of the Cycling Ireland Zwift Winter League. We're over the halfway point as 2 laps of the London Loop for 30 kilometres of racing beckon for the riders this morning. I'm joined once again for today's scratch race by Ronan McLaughlin of cyclingtips.com. And Ronan, after last week's enthralling points race, we're back to a first past the post scenario today.
Yeah, we sure are. Scratch race today, but more traditional style racing, and that it's a mass start, and whoever gets to the finish line first is declared the winner. But yeah, certainly last week we had some exciting racing in the points race. Matteo Cigala coming out on top on the day, just pipping Chris McGlinchey to the line, and since then we've seen Chris McGlinchey go on to finish 13th in the inaugural Esports World Championships. So certainly seems to be two riders on top form, but not far behind them. Richard Barry and a host of other riders, and certainly another exciting day's racing on the cards today.
Yeah, plenty of great racing amongst the women as well. Heather Foley has an edge amongst the A riders. There aren't too many of those out, but certainly the B competition has been particularly interesting, and we'll be talking to one of those competitors very shortly. Well, in last week's fourth round in Innsbruck, league leader Matteo Cigala of Team Dan Morrissey edged reigning champion Chris McGlinchey and Richard Barry in the male A race. Stephen Edmondson took B class honours, Ross Blaney was best C, and Kevin Walsh was the top D rider. Among the women, series leader Heather Foley was again the top A rider, with Michelle McKinney taking her second top score among the B riders. Virginia Heenahan made it a hat-trick of C wins, as did Berdine Driscoll with her third D-class win. We caught up with Galway Bay Cycling Club's Michelle McKinney, a Rossnamon competitor on the road who loves the intensity of the effort she gets in Cycling Ireland Zwift League racing.
I'm surprised by how similar to a quote-unquote real race, an outdoor race, it felt. For me, my best performances have always come during a race effort, not a training effort. And it, like in my first Zwift race, I was already breaking my 2020 personal best. So it really pulled out those race performances that I can't really get during training. And I have found it a really good motivation as the months have worn on, particularly for me, because even when races were kind of getting run later in the summer, I just personally wasn't taking those risks with regards to COVID. I chose not to participate in any actual open road races. So it's been really great to have something to focus on and to keep me motivated in my training and to integrate it in my training that way. So I do reckon even past post COVID, which still seems like a long way away, I still think for myself and a lot of other road racers, it would be something we'll use during the winter to really hit those peaks that we might struggle to do just by ourselves.
You've arrived in this series in terms of scoring anyway. You didn't start scoring till round 2, but you've made up for lost time, a second place and a couple of victories since then.
Yeah, it's going pretty well. My coach didn't want me to take part in the first round because it was meant to be a rest week. So I'm kind of shaking my fist at him now. but yeah, it's going pretty well. So hopefully if I participate in all the remaining weeks, I can just keep the edge on Claire Richardson. But it's great having someone, obviously all the ladies there, but it's been a bit of a friendly rivalry with someone. It really whets your appetite to push harder and try to keep away.
In the league standings, Heather Foley of Maryland Wheelers has shown consistent strength among the A women, with Claire Richardson the top B rider, Andrea Lyons is the top C, and Berdine Driscoll is leading the Ds. In the men's standings, Matteo Cigala has opened up a 30-point advantage over Richard Barry, with Keane Ryan scoring well in third among the A riders at halfway. Connacht's Stephen Edmondson leads the Bs, Ross Blaney is the top C rider, and Vincent Morgan heads the Ds. We spoke to Blarney CC's Colm Sheehan, who was a fine fourth last Saturday after a maximum score at the final sprint. The Corkman particularly enjoys the way Zwift racing helps him to reach the intensity level necessary for managing his fitness.
I started Zwifting, I suppose, actually back October last year. I was getting an absolute. I dabbled with it during the summer, and I got absolutely trounced. Kind of started to learn the courses then and how to ride on it. It took me ages. I always had a high kind of power after a race because I went to the back and the front, and I could never get a good sit in it. But definitely learning the courses and getting a good sit in the bunch, it just helps. Even in the last, actually since lockdown, I practiced that way more. Like last winter, I was humming and hawing in the bunch and just putting out way too much power to stay there. So yeah, knowing where the kicks are, where the hills are, and when to get into the super tuck and things like that, they're massive in Zwift. It's energy saving at the end of the race. So yeah, more akin to it now. And would very sharp, like kicking out of a bunch and latching onto moves. It's very tactical as well. So it gives you that feel of a Thursday night league race that you get in Ireland, and there's plenty of them around the country on Tuesday and Thursday night. So it definitely replicates that, I think, anyway, for an hour. Yeah, the Zwifting is good though. It keeps you topped up. I mean, a race once a week definitely is the way to go, I think. Once a week minimum, anyway. Maybe two. But yeah, if you can plan it around your other workouts, then it's great.
Well, Ronan, plenty of great performances last week, and they've got to do it all again today on the London Loop course. It'll be familiar to many, and it's got that grippy little ascent of Box Hill.
Yeah, Box Hill is well known to pretty much everybody at this stage. It's a 3 kilometer climb, so it's by no means short, but it's not a long climb either, and at 4.3%. It's also not the steepest of climbs, but the fact that the riders have to tackle it twice. And the summit on the second lap comes just 6 kilometers from the finish means that it could have a big impact on the outcome.
Well, let's watch out for those late race attacks on Box Hill, and we're all set now for round 5 with the riders assembling on the start line, warming up on their trainers and getting set for a fast getaway. Let's head down now and see who's going racing this morning. Lined up at the end of Richard Barry has got position. He was first up, best dressed, and at the very head of affairs. He is super keen, one of the Cork phalanx. There's quite a cohort of riders from the very southern part of Ireland that are putting it up to the very best in Ireland racing. To start today because he is up for punishment. Fine 13th place in the World Championships just a few short days ago. He's recovered well and he's going for glory in the Cycling Ireland today. But let's keep an eye out to see who has also made the journey. We understand Matteo Cigara, who ended his 4 rounds of this style with victories on day 1 and indeed last Saturday morning. Played a very, very canny game, didn't he, Ronan? Scored well early on and then was able to mark out the riders that he needed to.
He sure did, yeah. He got an advantage there early on the opening laps last weekend, and that allowed him then just to sort of mark the riders closest to him, and eventually that tactic paid off for him. He got enough points in the final sprint to take the overall win.
So we are counting down the last few seconds. They're winding it up on their home trainers, up to Maximo Watson. It's a quick getaway, as might have been expected. Very experienced Cycling Ireland Zwift League competitor Richard Barry puts himself right to the head of affairs. Chris McGlinchey is within a few riders of the front without being quite on the front. We've got a few visiting riders, as ever, who are going to play their role, and that happened. That certainly was a case last week, as Conchine has outlined to us. He managed to hang on the coattails of one of the top Spanish riders. Very heavily indeed at the final sprint. Some other names to conjure with: Ronan McDonald well to the fore in the early stages. Paul Foley, as we're scrolling down, has also made the visit and is starting to move towards the head of affairs. Conor Verbruggen, certainly a rider to watch out for today. Gareth Carney as well. Conor Sprice from others as we down through the list. We'll keep an eye out as well on what's happening among the women competitors. The groups going off at minute intervals on this London Loop. Let's talk a little bit about the course in this early stages. Riders pushing hard to try and maintain a position in the front group. It's 460 metres of elevation total throughout the 2 laps. That's just over 230 metres of elevation per lap, Ronan. It doesn't on paper look like it's particularly difficult, but you know what, there's a few little grippy ones in there.
Yeah, certainly, on paper it's Box Hill that really stands out there and looks like the main course, but there's a lot of rolling terrain in this course, a couple of punchy little climbs, and the riders will have to have been well warmed up before the start here, because there's very little flat road throughout today's race, so it should make for good racing. It's certainly not going to be the easiest course that they'll face, of course, across the Zwift League, but I think all eyes will be on Box Hill in both laps to see who uses that as a launch pad and maybe tries to split the bunch that we see here now and make a break for the finish. But it'll be difficult for anybody to go all the way from the top of Box Hill to the finish line on their own if they want to make that attack. They're going to need 30 or 40 seconds, which is difficult to take on a short 3 kilometre climb. So yeah, very very tough course, but at the same time very open and should suit a lot of different riders.
Through the tunnel and into the early stages of this London Loop, the first of 2 laps of 15 kilometres for a total of just over 30 kilometres of racing. Short wind up before they hit the circuit proper, and then into this just under 15 kilometres of tough racing this morning. Richard Barry is well to the fore, as we mentioned. Tommy Evans as well, the evergreen Ulster former Ross winner, and is in flying form. He's been a passionate advocate of Zwift racing, and don't just do as I do as I teach, he might say, as a coach for many a Cycling Ireland rider, and indeed he's very popular in triathlon. He's an important coach, I think, for a lot of riders who are involved in triathlon, and Tommy Evans is practicing what he preaches by getting involved in the racing today, and we wish him well in his efforts to get that elusive first win amongst the A's. He's got to defeat some of the best riders in Irish Zwift League racing, with the news that there are still the restrictions continue into the new year, and the opportunities to race outdoors are still proving difficult to find, as the authorities beyond Cycling Ireland, above and beyond Sport Ireland, still ever cautious, and it's not going to be anytime soon that riders are going to be certain that they're going to be able to race outdoors. Therefore, Cycling Ireland Zwift League continuing to offer this out. Wednesday, it was Rower, of course, that took the overall title amongst the men. It was Ashley Moolman-Pasio, the World Tour superstar, that took the women's world title on that occasion. And it proved a very popular event indeed. Richard Barry nestling in the pack at the moment. The man who's playing fourth in the league at the moment, Keaton Ryan, I'm just picking him out well to the fore. Ryan is going well. Focusing just for the moment on the women competitors who are now up and running and away from the start line. Heather Foley is in amongst them. She's naturally enough, as befits a rider of her particular stature and standing in the world of cycling, duathlon and indeed triathlon racing, has been the standout competitor. Among the little riders who scored points so far this Cycling Ireland Zwift League, and we're also going to focus on the B competitors as well today to see how Michelle McKinney gets on in her battle to unseat Claire Richardson. Then heading back up front among the men, Hamilton pressing on close to the front, Chris McGlinchey, Matteo Cigala, they tracking each other, Richard Barry, and it was something Tom Sheehan mentioned to me in our little conversation the other day, was that it took him a while, but he really eventually got the hang of being able to stay in the group without using too much energy, not having to sort of yo-yo off the back and then make a big effort to get back on. And it's a subtle art, isn't it, of your ears and out through your eyeballs, and yet managing to sort of be calm about it and use the energy in just the right way.
Yeah, it sure is, and it's there's a lot of tactics goes into Zwift racing that newcomers to the sport might not be aware of. But we just seen the riders there coming up Northumberland Avenue, and it might seem coincidence that you've got the top 3 or 4 riders in the overall standings placed together, but that's a short 400-meter drag at just about 5%. But it just shows you the level that these riders are at the moment, that they naturally find themselves drifting towards the front anytime the power has to go up, or anytime the effort is increased. And we see Chris McGlinchey still on the front here. So it's the racing in the early phases of today's outing is proven quite challenging here already. Some riders struggling to hang on at the back of the group there, and good racing so far.
Yeah, and you can tell that group is starting to split up a little bit, and the numbers are being reduced. There'll be efforts made to get back up and get involved and get back up towards the front. That visiting rider Beptache from Spain is back in again this week, so let's keep an eye out to see will he be able to get in the mix. perhaps have some influence on how riders are going to be riding this one through to the finish line. Naturally enough, we're focusing on the Cycling Ireland Zwift League membership. They're the ones that will be scoring points towards the league, and as we are just over 5 kilometers in at this point, we've got a way to go before we arrive at the climb. But not that far indeed. We're not that far from the start of the Box Hill climb, and it's as Ronan has mentioned, 3 kilometers at 4.4%. So after about 6k of running, we'll plunge down the descent in the virtual underground station. And that's going to be a grippy little climb a little bit later on when they have to get back up and into London. Keep an eye out for that one as well. Could be perhaps the springboard or the launching pad for a late attack at the very back end of the second lap. It's the first of 2 laps. As we see towards the back of the group is White pressing on. Gareth Carney as well. Orico Flynn well to the fore. The barriers I've mentioned, Colm Sheehan. Just to run down the league standings, just to remind you, amongst the 8 competitors, it's Matteo Cigala who opened up a bit of an advantage, a little bit of daylight, points of a lead, 360 against 330. Cigala ahead of Richard Barry from Finbar's Cycling Club. Cian Ryan from Four Master Cycling Club has been riding very consistently. 4th is his best result from round 1, and the man from up Donegal direction is lying 3rd in the league at the moment. Ronan McDonald 4th. Colm Sheehan indeed is in 5th. Michael Considine, Conor Verbruggen, and Chris McGlinch, who missed out and wasn't involved in the first couple of rounds, is relatively far down the order. It's going to be tough for him to defend his title. You can, of course, drop one of the 8 rounds, so he still is going to have one duck egg that he's got to score. He's only actually participated in 2 of the events so far, so it's going to be a challenge for Chris McGlinch to get up in amongst them. I wouldn't rule it out, though.
Yeah, certainly he's up against him there. He's missed a couple of rounds and he's allowed to drop one, but I think missing out last weekend to Matteo Cigala might have a huge effect in that, he really has to win every round from now on if he wants to defend. And some of the steepest slopes are right at the bottom, so riders are going to be given everything they have now to try and stay in the group. There is a flatter section that they climb just about levels off after this initial steep part, so riders will be trying to do their best just to hang on through the steeper section and then get a chance to recover in the slipstream of the bunch as it does flatten out before the final kick up to the summit again.
Well, they're on the climb, and that is naturally where people are starting to use their featherweight. They're using their power-ups. A quick reminder, if you're new to Cycling Ireland Zwift League racing, or indeed Zwift in general, that there are these advantages, these tactical cards that you can play. The power-ups, the lightweight one is the green feather, and it reduces the weight of the rider by 9.5 kilograms, or 10% of their body weight for fully 15 seconds. When's the right time to play it? Riders are given power-ups in a random way. So we pick up some of the figures from Matteo Cigala. Look at that. He's cranking out, well, for a moment, well over 400 watts, still just up sort of 350 to 400 watt margin. His heart rate is at 185. Don't know what his maximum is. I bet he's not that far away from it. It's a pretty high heart rate at the moment, and still trying to crank the pedals round at approaching 80 RPM. So he's revving to decent effect, and it all amounts to a virtual speed of approaching 30 kilometers an hour. It's not the steepest hill in the world, but that's still pretty impressive numbers for Matteo Cigala, and indeed those other riders gravitating around him, who include Chris McGlinch, Colm Sheehan, Richard Barry, McDonald, and Cian well, and the others. It's some decent numbers being put out. When's the right time to play your power up on this climb?
Well, every rider has their own tactic and when they'll use their power ups, and it really depends on which power up you have as well. If you've got the featherweight one, you use it on the steepest sections, whereas if you've got the aero boost, you'll use that on a flatter section where you're going higher speed. But we can see it looks like Chris McGlinch here is trying to split the pack. He's been on the front here for quite a while on this climb. He's up there around 7 watts per kilo for a sustained effort, and we can see the effect that it is having behind. The bunch is completely strung out and riders getting dropped off the back.
It's absolutely destroyed it. If I'm looking at the numbers, I can tell you the first 4 or 5 riders are by fractions of a second. Chigala, McGlinchey, Kumshin, Zonneveld is a Dutch visitor. Herdina is a man from Czech Republic who's come to play in the Cycling Ireland Zwift League. Pep Tache, the visitor from Spain, is also in amongst them. Chris McGlinchey's dialed in. He's 350, 400 watts. He's done some damage, no doubt about it. But behind, leading what, 6? Well, let me have a look at it. Leading 10 riders, covered by a second. And then there are a few gaps from about 13th behind. Then we've got riders who are in an anxious moment because Alan Glendinning is amongst them, Portico Flynn. Those are riders that are floundering somewhat in the wake of this select group of 12, 13 riders up.
Yeah, and we're approaching the top of Box Hill now, so anybody in this group will be doing their best just to hang on and make sure they stay with this group. Once you go over the top of the climb, if there's any gap at all, it is very difficult to close back up to a group in front of you in Zwift racing. So those riders in this group will be doing their best just to hang on.
McGlinchey's not hanging on. He's not hanging around either. He is charging away from the rest, opening up an advantage just around about a second, so nothing of great significance at the moment. But as they reach this little plateau, there's a sting in the tail in Box Hill, and it could be significant. Are we going to see power-ups in evidence as we get close to the hill?
Yeah, certainly. Anybody that has one now might be a good time to use it. They'll get refreshed again for the next lap. So anybody, especially if they find themselves out at the moment as a result of this effort that Chris McGlinchey's putting in, they'll be pressing that space bar to get their power up used as quick as possible, I guess.
Chris McGlinchey, 13th in the world last Wednesday, and I won't say hopping mad after it. There was an element of satisfaction about a fine result against the very best world, including many World Tour riders and indeed World Championship rowers. But I think Chris McGlinchey really wanted a top 10 in that competition, believed that he was capable of it, and he wanted just to reset a little bit, redress the balance, and demonstrate his undoubted ability, the physical attributes, and indeed his commitment to Zwift League racing and Zwift racing in general over the last couple of years has been exemplary. And Chris McGlinchey from Northern Ireland, racing with Vitus Pro Cycling, just the last few remaining rides indeed for Chris McGlinchey in this jersey, because that team is folding at the end of the season, and it's been a great couple of years indeed for the Vitus Pro Cycling team, and Chris McGlinchey representing those colours with great pride. And he has split this one to bits, and now is going to have a look at the damage that he's done, because Pep Tache is managing to get in there, the Spanish visitor, but also in there safely in the group. Richard Barry, Ronan McDonnell has made the split. Sheehan is thereabouts. Matteo Chigala, it's the riders that we would have expected. Thijs Zonneveld is the Dutch visiting rider that we mentioned a few moments ago. Who else has managed to get in? There's another Spanish rider as well. Name be established.
Looks like Cian Ryan, who's currently third place overall in the league standings, has missed this split here. So these riders might want to press on to try and push out this advantage that they have over Cian Ryan's group just behind.
Yeah, he's showing at 17 seconds removed, so problems developing for Cian Ryan. He's got a bit of a headache to try and close a 17-second advantage. Richard Barry's having to absolutely empty himself just for a moment. Bit of a super tuck for Chris McGlinchey, but look what he's done to it. And Chris McGlinchey has drawn Richard Barry clear. Barry finally gets some relief, knows how to play this one. The leading three riders know that they've got the speed on the descent, that they can take a momentary moment to try and recover. And these little micro recoveries are absolutely critical.
Yeah, and the other thing we see here is that all these riders in the front group can be slipstreaming off each other, whereas we just see on the display on the right, 9th and 10th place on the road are solo riders on their own, so they haven't got that slipstream effect of a rider in front of them, and that's really where we still see this gap now push out, and we already see the 9th and 10th place riders on the road here losing big time to this group in front, and even the three riders at the very head of affairs here, Chris McGlinchey, Richard Barry and Colin Sheehan, are opening up an advantage on a small group just behind them.
Well, that could be key. Will these riders ride together? Will they continue to press home their advantage? It's absolutely on a knife edge here. We're still on the first lap, and really this second edition of the Cycling Ireland Zwift League has been in marked contrast to the first, because the amount of attacking racing that we've seen in the first 4 rounds is being replicated once more in round 5 as Richard Barry presses on in the company of Chris McGlinchey on the front of the trio of riders, including Colm Sheehan, clear of the rest at the moment. 2.5 seconds, 3 seconds make that back to Matteo Cigala, who has a headache. No super tuck for him at the moment. He's pressing on as best he can to close that gap, and Cigala has a problem. He's now just over 3 seconds back. Doesn't sound like a lot, but those 3 riders up front are a considerable threat to his league championship ambitions. So we pick up the B group behind. They're starting 1 minute in arrears of the rest, and these B riders are also racing for glory today. Plenty of visiting riders in amongst them as we try and pick up on what their experience is like. Riders using their lightweight power up to reduce their weight by just over 9 kilograms, which is not insignificant at all. And that group has also split considerably on the climb, and it gives you some sense of just how, well, there's bodies everywhere. They're all over Box Hill, and it's split considerably on this climb. So Richard Barry up front amongst the leaders. We're back with the A group and pressing on for glory, as we still see that Cigala now finds himself just over 4 seconds in arrears. He has got the assistance of the Spanish rider Pep Tache. Zonneveld there as well to help Cigala. The league leader Ronan McDonald will also be trying to see what he can do, but he's got a 4 or 5 second margin between himself and Matteo Cigala. Barry now presses on. Little bit of daylight between himself and Colm Sheehan. Everyone wants to go racing this morning.
Yeah, and we talked earlier about, Chris McGlinchey had missed the opening rounds of this league, and that it was up against him to try and defend his title. But this is exactly the sort of tactic that McGlinchey needs to play. He needs to try and get away with a couple of others, get as many points taken away from Cigala as possible. And it might be a bit earlier than we expected to see it today, but this is quite a good move. We can see the gap is growing out to 6 seconds now to the 4 riders chasing just behind. So Colm Sheehan, Richard Barry and Chris McGlinchey here in front stand to take all 3 maximum points if they can press on and extend this advantage that they have.
So they are clear of the rest and continuing to open their advantage. McGlinchey showing it 20 seconds. He's not that well, just 10ths of a second. What am I saying? Getting a little bit confused and wound up there, as you might expect. But Richard Barry is the rider who's really wants to stomp on the pedals and maximise this opportunity to move up in the league standings. Richard Barry, I can remind you, from St Finbarr's Cycling Club in Cork, sits second in the league at the moment. Matteo Cigala is the league leader. 30 points his advantage, and Cigala with 2 wins, a second and a third place in so far from the 4 rounds that we've had. Well, this offers a massive opportunity to Richard Barry, so no surprise that he wants to press on. No surprise too that Colm Sheehan, lying 5th in the standings at the moment, non-scoring in round 2, so Sheehan's his points situation at the moment not reflective, I think, of his real ability, and he's also wants to make the most of this opportunity. But it's Barry that's pressing on and opening up a little bit of daylight between the other 2.
Yeah, and Colm Sheehan just trying to force Chris McGlinchey to come to the front here. And it's interesting at the moment these riders are going to have to be the best of enemies and work together well until we get to Box Hill in the next lap, where at that point they'll probably turn against each other and the attacking will start. So it's an interesting dynamic forming here, and that the riders are trying to work together, but they've let a gap open to Richard Barry here.
McGlinchey's gone. He decided he didn't want to wait and help Colm Sheehan to get up there. So McGlinchey just springs past Colm Sheehan, and then immediately, as if he was stood still, Richard Barry is dispensed with them. McGlinchey's gone solo here. They're going to have to make an effort. Sheehan and Barry pressing on. And I think Chris McGlinchey was a little bit mindful of the fact that the group were coming up from behind and likely to make the junction once more. So Pep Tache, Zonneveld, and more important, importantly perhaps for the Cycling Ireland Zwift League, Matteo Cigala all pushing on to try and close that margin to Chris McGlinchey. McGlinchey forges on, brings Colm Sheehan with them, and will Richard Barry be able to respond? It changes in a heartbeat, because, well, in about 180 heartbeats, because Richard Barry was up front, had an advantage, and suddenly finds himself with daylight to close.
Yeah, we just seen Colm Sheehan there trying to force Chris McGlinchey to take a turn on the front and easing off the power, and what ended up happening was they let Richard Barry right away in front of them, and we've seen Chris McGlinchey counter that then by trying to launch an attack from behind Colm Sheehan to jump across to Richard Barry, and what ended up happening was that the two riders playing cat and mouse behind have now found themselves off the front. Richard Barry has found himself back in this chasing group, and it's a long way to go to the finish from here for just two riders together, Chris McGlinchey and Colm Sheehan. It would be a big ask to hold off such a strong five-man group just behind them now, so it'd be interesting to see what happens over the next couple of kilometres.
Quick update on the women, just to let you know, as we see Heather Foley is clear of the field in a select group that includes Linda Kelly, the visiting rider Maja Winter-Brandt from Denmark is in there. Claire Richardson, we believe, has managed to make it back up and into them. Well, last time we heard there was actually about 10 seconds between Heather Foley and Claire Richardson. Lily Swan, Michelle McKinney in there as well. So the gap for, or at least the scrap for B-class honours seems to be joined, but at a slight distance to Heather Foley and the rest. We wait for full confirmation of those numbers, but no question that Heather Foley once again showing her dominance, her ability and her sheer class as she's hoovering up riders from the men's D group just in front of her. I'm sure there'll be one or two C riders as well. We'll drop back into the fold as she continues to hammer home her advantage. Back up front of the men A competition at the moment, we see Chris McGlinchey and Colm Sheehan locked in combat, and behind now over 10 seconds back to the Richard Barry group. He has been joined by Matteo Cigala, so that's significant in terms of what's going on in the league here. Gala, I think, will be somewhat relieved that he's managed to get back on terms with Richard Barry, but a bit of a headache because Colm Sheehan's set to score heavily today if he can hang on with Chris McGlinchey. McGlinchey, in turn, having missed 2 rounds, needs to score maximums between now and the conclusion of this league, and he's put himself into the position of maximum opportunity. An advantage of, well, what's it showing at? Approaching 15 seconds to the rest behind. Is there any way back?
Yeah, well, you would normally a gap of 15 seconds on Zwift. It's very difficult to close, but consider the strength of this five-man group behind all top riders that we've seen perform week in, week out on the Cycling Ireland Zwift League, and the fact that it's just 2 riders in front trying to hold them off. It's by no means a done deal yet.
Matteo Cigala riding in the wake of the others, but it's a small group. Everybody's got to ride up and over. Everybody's got to make big efforts, and there's big numbers coming out from Cigala. 300 watts, and the rest is heart rate at the moment 162. It's by no low, but save something, as indeed have the others. Got to try and save something for Box Hill to come, because it absolutely destroyed things last time round. Sheehan and McGlinchey, I'll remind you, are now 16 seconds to the good ahead of this small and select group that includes Richard Barry and Matteo Cigala, second and first in the Cycling Ireland Zwift League. Just to let you know, we've got a couple of visiting riders from Spain and also a rider from the Netherlands in this group chasing behind. Ronan McDonald finds himself 43 seconds back. He's 8th on the road as things currently stand. Other riders to look out for. Alan Glendinning lies 11th at the moment, still just almost a minute back, and he's 11th in this bike race. Conor Verbruggen 16th at 56 seconds. Others to conjure with. Tommy Evans, as I've mentioned, is flying along, but he's 1 minute 25 seconds back. Last time I heard, Pádraig O'Flynn, another rider who has been consistently in the top 10s in the Cycling Ireland Zwift League, but now finds himself approaching 1.5 minutes back. It's an absolute power fest being demonstrated to us by Colm Sheehan and Chris McGlinchey.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see the group behind there they're really not working well together at all. We've seen coming up Northumberland Avenue again. It is a slight drag there, and they were laying down some serious watts, up to 10 watts per kilo, and almost attacking each other. And now back on the flat roads, they're down at 2.5, 3 watts per kilo, and as a result, this gap to the two riders in front is growing all the time, and we're right up to 21 seconds now. So it's looking more and more positive for the two riders in front, and certainly now when we drop down through the subway and hit Box Hill again, if the gap's still over 20 seconds at that stage, it's going to be difficult to see this group coming back.
Still huge efforts going in from the two up front as well. 6-7 watts per kilo momentarily from Sheehan and McGlinchey. It's still well over 4 consistently amongst this leading two. That's the sort of effort level that's going in from Chris McGlinchey and from Colm Sheehan. And what does Sheehan do now? Because McGlinchey is the man with the reputation. He is the man who is the reigning title holder. And for Colm Sheehan, an opportunity to take a scalp such as Chris McGlinchey is a massive opportunity for him. Sheehan too will also be mindful of the fact that having missed a round, his opportunities to move up in the league standings are considerable here. Does he? How does he play his tactics? Is he kind of just ride up and over with McGlinchey and hope he's got the legs, or is there any other way that he can play it? You've got to remember we've got power-ups to conjure with as well.
Yeah, I think these riders need each other equally as much, and that by staying together here and fighting it out for the win on the line means that they will be taking an extra set of points away from whoever finishes closest to them. And should they go on to drop each other on Box Hill here and maybe end up getting caught by the group behind, that means that the leader here, both these riders need big point scoring, and they need the riders at the top of the league standings to not score so many. So I think it's in their interest to stick together here for as long as possible and really just fight it out in the final kilometres.
We're on the hill at the second and final time of asking. We're on the second of 2 laps and we're inside 10 kilometres to go. So the final third of this fifth round of the Cycling Ireland Zwift League is underway as we hit the 3 kilometre ramp up Box Hill. It's in a virtual Surrey, and they'll all be in a Surrey state at the end of this one. The way that they have ridden at the first lap round, I've no doubt there'll be similar damage. Riders in massive oxygen debt. Their legs will be burning, but they know that the pain and the suffering will be concluded with around about 6 kilometres to go. Remember, there is that little bit of a sting in the tail, that little kicker towards the top. After the King of the Mountains, it just plateaus ever so slightly and then ramps up again just before they plunge down towards London once more. The chasers behind, 22 seconds back. They're working well together, but are they working fast enough, if you might say? Are they going fast enough to try and do anything about the margin to the two up front? You wouldn't bet on it right now. Those two up front have been, well, so impressive and consistently impressive throughout the editions of the Cycling Ireland Zwift League. Sheehan has really shown himself to be a rider of some considerable ability. Blarney Cycling Club's superstar.
Made up an attack from Chris McGlinchey in front here, just looking at his watts per kilo lighting up in red there. It certainly looks like he's opening up a gap to Colin just behind.
Well spotted, Ronan. I just looked down at my notes and that was the perfect opportunity for Chris McGlinchey to go. He's opened up an advantage. Sheehan now has a problem. He no longer has the draft effect advantage of being in the wake of Chris McGlinchey at any moment. And McGlinchey quickly, without any, seemingly without difficulty, I can tell you there's a massive effort gone in to do this, but he has opened up a margin of over 7 seconds, and Chris McGlinchey, carrying the form that took him to 13th place in the World Championships last Wednesday, wants to continue this rich seam form. He tapered nicely for last Wednesday, and clearly the form is absolutely perfect at the moment, and he doesn't want to leave this one to a sprint. He is one of the most accomplished sprinters in Zwift League racing in the world, yet he prefers to just show what his all-round physical ability. And on this climb, still a way to go before they reach the top. Only about a half of it done at this moment, and his advantage now approaching 10 seconds for Colm Sheehan. He retains a 15-second margin over the rest behind. Has he cracked? Does he have the strength to hold off the rest behind?
Yeah, there when Chris McGlinchey made his attack. I think they were about 22 seconds ahead of that group behind, and now Colin Sheehan's just 14 seconds ahead of them. And if Chris McGlinchey is feeling super strong here today, I wonder would it have been better to keep Colin Sheehan with him, maybe drag him a bit closer to the top of the climb and launch his attack, and that way he could ensure that Colin Sheehan would take the points for second place. And with these two riders much further down the standings than they might expect to find themselves in the overall league rankings, by taking the top 2 points overall, it sort of benefits both riders, in that Richard Barry and Matteo Gigala, who are right at the top at the moment, are then scoring less points. So it'll be interesting to see now if Colin Sheehan can hang on to second place, and he's certainly got a tough ask ahead of him. The gap's down to now just 11 seconds between him and the chasers close behind.
Yeah, so reminder that Colin Sheehan, in the of our man up front, Chris McGlinchey, had a margin of over 22 seconds approaching the bottom of this hill. Now that's down to 11 seconds. Make that 10. Sheehan is cycling through treacle. He's going backwards at the moment. The top of this hill cannot come quick enough for him. The rest behind are going to get on terms. And Sheehan, you wonder, can he get to the top of the hill before the others get to him? Their pace across this virtual format is considerably faster than it is. Will he be able to recover? Uses his lightweight advantage now. He uses that power up to try and give himself that 9.5 kilograms advantage. Suddenly gets quicker, and he stems the tide at just the right time.
Yeah, the other option Colin has here is, can back off as he gets closer and closer to the top, almost allowing the group behind to catch him, and that you get an extra bit of recovery and then be fresher for the fight for the finish. If he thinks that he isn't going to hang on all the way to the finish line, that might actually be his best option, is just to allow himself to get caught just as they crest the climb. That'll give himself more chance to recover. He's got the full descent to recover then, and then launch a final attack to try and take second place.
McGlinchey is clear of the rest with a 14 6 seconds of the best of the rest, led by visiting rider Pep Tacha. And then we've got Richard Barry is in there, Matteo in that group behind. Select group of just 4 riders that are chasing second place rider on the road, and the first place man up front, heading towards glory, picking up riders from the later starting groups who perhaps have been suffering a little bit on this difficult climb, but he makes it look so easy, doesn't he? Chris McGlinchey just absolutely flies past 550 odd watts, no problem at all. And his heart rate is at 176. I think that's a little bit way off his maximum, but still he can crank out 550, 600 watts in a consistent manner. It's 5.3 watts per kilo. Got a few kilos to offer here, and McGlinchey now up to 17 seconds ahead of Sheehan, who's been visited. He's been caught by that group. It includes Richard Barry and Matteo Gigala. So has Colin Sheehan managed to just save a little bit of energy, just recover ever so slightly? He must have made a huge effort to try and stay with McGlinchey that time.
And it's worth noting as well, as impressive as Chris McGlinchey's attack has been there, the group behind has by no means slowed up, and in fact they've actually closed the gap when you compare it to the bottom of the climb. They were at 22 seconds. The two in front have now split. Chris McGlinchey has put in his big attack, and no doubt has spent a few matches there, and he's now down to just 14 seconds ahead of this group. So this race is by no means over.
Well, that's fascinating, isn't it? As you mentioned, it was 22 seconds at the bottom of the climb, but Chris McGlinchey now just 15 seconds to the good. It's a group behind, including Matteo Gigala, who rides to the front and uses that power up. You got to use the ones you've got. You only carry one at a time, and when you use that, then next sprint point or KOM point, then you get another one offered to you, and he's using the draft boost ever so briefly, you might say. Increase the draft effect by 50% for 30 seconds. The yellow feather, or the white feather on the yellow background, to be absolutely correct about it, is the lightweight, 9.5 kilograms reduced from his weight. So suddenly Zonneveld finds himself, it's all too easy, just momentarily, just for 15 seconds.
The tables will be completely turned on this lap now that Chris McGlinchey finds himself in front with no slipstream effect on this descent, whereas the 6 riders that we have in the group will all be helping each other effectively going down this descent and slipstreaming each other and slingshotting each other up to higher speeds.
Yes, they're all in a power-tuck situation, but the fact that they're able to work together while not pedaling, and it does make it a little bit difficult for the guy up front.
Sure does, yeah. And we see now Chris McGlinchey must still be feeling good. He's up to 9-10 watts per kilo here on the descent, just to get a bit more speed eked out, and then he recovers a bit. We can see him here now. He's in the super tuck position on his avatar on the screen, but we can see the webcam here showing us that he's sitting upright, trying to get as much air into his lungs as possible, trying to recover as much as he can, and now he's laying down the watts again to keep that speed up as high as possible, right up to 800-900 watts and 12.5 watts per kilo. And
no one knows better than Chris McGlinchey exactly how to play this. The minute he gets up to speed and the gradient plumbs just as he needs it, get into the super tuck, goes as fast as he's going to go, and will take the opportunity for a couple of seconds recovery and takes a drink. He knows this course better than anyone else in world Zwift racing, or at least as well as anyone else in the world, and his advantage is holding steady at the moment at 17 seconds. Has he got a margin here? We're down to the last 2.5 kilometers of racing.
Yeah, certainly, he's one of the most efficient riders that there is on Zwift. He was, in the esports world championships on Wednesday, he was ranked in the top 10 in terms of efficiency, and that's just using as little watts as possible to travel at the speed that they're moving. So it really depends on what this group behind does. If they can get together and work really well on the final kilometres here, they stand a chance of catching Chris McGlinchey, but with just 2 kilometres to go and a 17-second advantage, looks like he's just drawn it back into his favour, and he stands a good chance of taking it all the way to the finish line now.
Not too many opportunities and not too many topographical issues for the riders between now and the finish, albeit I should remind you we've got the stairs, that 100 metre little kicker at 15%. Comes round about nowish really, and we're coming into it ever so. It's just 100 metres, 1.5 kilometres to the line. It might offer an opportunity for a rider to try and springboard across the gap. Here is McGlinchey reaching this stairs. He's just get out of the saddle and really ramp it up to over 10 watts per kilo just for that 100 metres to get up and over and maintain momentum.
Yeah, now that he's up at over 19 seconds, he's got himself up on the stairs. It looks like he's going to carry this one all the way to the finish line, and it is a good group that we've got behind, but it's very, very difficult for them to get together and really work efficiently on this run onto the finish with such a long descent off Box Hill, and then the flat roads into the finish interrupted by the stairs there. It's just going to be difficult for them to really work together, and we can see now the gap has gone right up to 25 seconds to Matteo Cigala.
We're focusing our attention not just on the lead but also on the battle for second place behind, because the lead of the league heading into round 6 is going to be finally poised, I think. Among the women behind, Heather Foley still has an advantage over Linda Kelly, Maya Winter-Brandt, Richardson Swan, Julia Lay and the rest, and they're on Box Hill further behind. I think we'll probably go back to try and pick up the leaders among the A competitors inside the final kilometres. Indeed, just 850 metres remaining for what is now a victory tour to the line for Chris McGlinchey. He's done the hard work, opened up an advantage up to 20 seconds. He's not going to hold back between now and the finish line. He's going to continue to rev it out over these final 650 metres of racing. It has been another exemplary performance, a dominant performance ultimately for Chris McGlinchey, albeit he did have the company of Colm Sheehan for quite a while, and what a great battle it's been. Inside 500 metres to go now.
Yeah, and it looks like the action's really kicking off in the group behind. There seems to be attacks going left, right and centre, and at the moment Pep Tachi has got a small advantage, but he won't be scoring points. It's more Colm Sheehan, Richard Barry and Matteo Cigala that we're looking for, and where exactly they finish in today's race.
Well, we'll focus on that very shortly, but inside the final 200 metres to go, it's not going to be a finishing sprint to the line for Chris McGlinchey. He's going to get his virtual arms in the air. Maybe he'll put his actual arms in the air. I suspect it's routine for him. Cross the line, takes an victory. Chris McGlinchey's got the win. He's got the maximum score. Behind it's our visiting rider Pep Tache that is racing clear of the rest who are looking at each other. He's not in the points standings. He's not part of the Cycling Ireland Zwift League. Gets second on the day. Who's going to get third? Sheehan had an advantage. He's about to get ambushed by Matteo Cigala on the line, and that is significant. Cigala gets up for third ahead. We wait for full confirmation of that. Ahead of Colm Sheehan. Richard Barry, I believe, was fifth across the line. Zonneveld, the visitor, another visiting rider in seventh, and Pearson, another visiting rider, and several visiting riders indeed as we wait for the next of the Irish. What a fantastic edition of the Cycling Ireland Zwift League that was. Now, among the A men, Chris McGlinchey getting the victory, Matteo Cigala the next best of the Irish, and then Colm Sheehan and Richard Barry. We're waiting for the arrival of the B riders shortly, and we're going to focus some attention as well on the leading women with, as I mentioned a little earlier, Maya Winter-Brandt, Heather Foley, Linda Kelly, well to the fore. This is Foley and Brandt, I believe, who were riding in close attendance last time we heard. Last update we got on ZwiftPower.com was that Linda Kelly recently stepping up into the A category. Kelly in the flying form. Foley, of course, multi and indeed reigning Irish duathlon champion, also multi-champion in triathlon, and indeed an Irish road race champion in cycling back in 2009. And she's on the climb. Just to take you through some of the leading competitors amongst their categories, Donald Galvin was the leading Irish rider amongst the D competitors. Kevin Walsh and Vincent Morgan, who've tasted glory already amongst the Ds in the first rounds of the competition, were racing in his wake. Indeed, Galvin and Walsh had opened up a bit of an advantage on Vincent Morgan, so perhaps an opportunity for Galvin to take a first victory among the Ds. Amongst the Cs, the leading Irish rider Keith Lacey going well. Had Kevin Flynn for company in the press for in the push for C-class honours. Amongst the Bs, Eugene Power clear of the rest in flying form. Vinny O'Leary also going well on the day. Stephen Edmondson, the league leader, just behind him. Fergus Fagan and John Gibbons were the leading Irish competitors amongst the Bs last time we heard. We're looking at Heather Foley and waiting for the results from the A competitors. Chris McGlinchey getting the victory, as I mentioned. Pep Tache, the visiting rider, second across the line. Let's have a look at the finish again as we pick up the results. And it's McGlinchey that gets the win in round 5, ahead of Pep Tache, the visiting rider. Matteo Cigala, the league leader, gets up for third. That's important for him, ahead of Sheehan, Bar, Zonneveld, and other visiting riders in the top 10. But absolutely critical finishing sprint from Cigala there.
Yeah, it sure was, and he'll actually have extended his lead in the overall rankings today. So it was a good day out for Matteo Cigala, despite the fact that he came home on third in today's race. He'll actually have extended his lead.
Yeah, indeed. We're just picking up the update from Gary Nugent, who sent us the league standings. It's provisional at the moment, but we understand that Matteo Cigala has now opened up his advantage to 45 points over Richard Barry. Comes Sheehan now in third place, and Chris McGlinchey up fourth in the Cycling Ireland Zwift League. 2 maximums and a second place finish from his 3 participations has moved McGlinchey up into fourth. He'll drop a 0 there as well, which will help him to move further up the honours. But Matteo Cigala scoring consistently. He's got 2 wins and 2 second places, and that is a nice advantage, albeit far from a winning one, as we head towards the next round next week. Heather Foley putting out the watts, approaching 300 watts up and over the climb at the final time of asking. Pressing on for glory today. Among the leading women, Winter-Brandt, as I mentioned, in the company of Heather Foley. Linda Kelly as well has also been going well today. And they're hoovering up riders from other groups. They continue their relentless progress. For Matteo Cigala, he'll be absolutely thrilled that he managed to get back on terms with Colm Sheehan. Sheehan saved something for that finishing sprint, but it'll feel, I think, like an opportunity missed, albeit it was a great throw of the dice, wasn't it, from Sheehan?
Yeah, it certainly was, and if we think back to the start of the second lap when the three riders off the front, Colm Sheehan, Chris McGlinchey and Richard Barry split and they ended up losing Richard Barry to the group behind. That might have been the real difference there for Colm Sheehan. Had it been three riders sharing that workload in front with just that extra bit of recovery that offered, it might just have given them enough chance to get over Box Hill.
Waiting for more groups heading towards the finish line at the moment. Chris McGlinchey has got the win, so he's already preparing his victory speech at home in Belfast. The riders are going to use whatever aero power up advantages they have as they head towards the finish line. Amongst the B competitors, I can tell you that Eugene Power has been going well of late. Vinny O'Leary, as I mentioned, Fergus Fagan and John Gibbons, all managing to keep themselves close to the head of affairs. Power in the leading group. Gibbons a little bit further back last time we heard, but still not too far from the head of affairs. And across the line to complete amongst the B competitors. That's the work done for them. Back to Foley, the leading woman competitor, who's pressing on. And Foley really has been an exemplary competitor and really supported this league consistently, and it's been an important outlet for her. She's based in Sligo. The Ulster woman has been stalwart competitor in so many different branches of this and other sports in recent times. And Foley's heading towards the finish line, and that's where we have to leave it for this morning's Cycling Ireland Zwift League. The fifth round is complete, and it's victory and the glory going to Chris McGlinchey once more. 2 wins for the World Championship star as he adds to his total, and indeed also adds to his total. Matteo Cigala getting up for the position of second Cycling Ireland Zwift League competitor on the line ahead of his rivals Colm Sheehan and Richard Barry. Those are the leading men. They're home and hose. They've done their work. We have done our work as well for this morning. It only remains for me to thank Ronan McLaughlin for his assistance this morning. My name is Declan Quigley. We'll be back with you. We're not live next week, but we'll be live for the next round of the series just after Christmas. Between now and Christmas, though, we will have a highlights roundup program on Wednesday week, so do tune in for that. We'll keep in touch with that, and check out cyclingireland.ie for all your news of Cycling Ireland Zwift League racing and indeed other activities online and not too long away outdoors as well. So thanks for being with us this morning. Please do join again. For now, it's goodbye.